Hi everyone, we are now live. Hi, this is Kerry Noonan here from the Groundswell Project, and online with me is Pia Insulandi and Molly Carlisle, the ambassadors of Dying to Know Day. Hello.
Hello, I'm just sending out a last-minute tweet.
Excellent, multitasking.
That's it.
And I'm not doing anything because I'm so IT'd out. That's why I look like a blue head.
So Molly is with us, but she's with us in blue avatar tonight. And
she's representing all mortals.
All mortals. And we are trying to still get Gypsy on the line, but Gypsy's having some technical problems, and I'm hoping by during the broadcast we can get her moving. So welcome to everyone. I can see that there's some people online watching, which is exciting. And of course the broadcast will also be available after the event. So let's get started.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Hello.
Something. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
No,
I
I'm
pushed
just
the wrong
having
button.
a slight technical error.
Okay.
Hold
Okay,
on.
so
There we go.
So I thought I'd just quickly talk a little bit about Dying to Know Day. So this is the second year that we've had Dying to Know Day. It was inspired, the day's inspired by the awesome book Dying to Know and the wonderful organisation Igniting Change. And their book inspired really the idea of bringing conversations around death, dying and bereavement to life in Australia. So we are fortunate to be able to be associated with the book and the amazing people who created the book and Igniting Change. And I first want to acknowledge them, thank them. And the co-founder of Dying to Know Day too, Nick Endicott. So
It was one of the first books I picked up for my PhD.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
How was that, Pia?
When I started and was looking for what death literature is around, I walked into my local readings and there it was. So I was like, yes, people are talking about this.
Oh, cool.
We just need to get more people talking about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing about the Dying to Know book is that lots of people have it. And what we found with some surveying and some research that we did, I'm not sure if you think this too, Molly, but lots of people have it and they have it sitting on their shelves and they can share it about and look at it, but not a lot of people are using it to start discussions in the community or with their friends and families. So that was one of the things we wanted to try and in a way, introduce the book into the community for discussions as well. Molly, can you still hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Good.
Yes.
So
I was just trying to upload a photo so you could see my head, but it's saved somewhere, but not here. So I'll have to stay like the blue head above the body, which I sort of like because there's a level of disconnect there, and I think that's very a good metaphor for how community deal with death and dying and death literacy. We do have a level of disconnect where the round blue circle on the top isn't somehow attached to the body of the community.
Nice work, Molly.
Very smooth.
Putting that in. So tell me, we are going to do this in an hour. I know it's hard because the three of the most excitable death-talking type people that I know are on this little chat. So let's see if we can do it in an hour. I'd love you to start by telling me, I'll start with you, Molly, tell me a little bit about tell me who you are, so in case there's people out there who don't know who you are, and what Dying to Know Day means to you.
So my name is Molly Carlisle. I've worked in death and dying and bereavement for eons, from the time I was probably 19. I'm now a grown-up with grown-up kids. And for me, so my persona in the community is that I am the death talker, and the reason that I had to invent some sort of a brand to explain what I do was because people are so reluctant to have this conversation, particularly outside of conventional mainstream health, which is where I've spent the bulk of my career. I needed to be able to encapsulate what they would get from me if they asked me to come and talk at their local Rotary or Provis or somewhere. And the more I used that moniker, the more people became interested, and I started to think, okay, there's something here. You know, there is a level of interest out there in the community, but the problem from my perspective, looking from, you know, from mainstream health outwards, is that people in the community don't feel a level of ownership over their own experiences of dying and grief and ritual and support, because mainstream health has been telling them for the last 25 years that this is health professional business, this isn't community business. And so, you know, I'm one of the first ones to put up my hand and own the fact that we have created this situation, and we're now saying to people in the community, you need to look after your dying, grieving people, and we've taken away from them all their capacity to do that. So Dying to Know Day, for me, is an opportunity to say to people, to normal people, this is your experience, this is your life, this is your death, this is your family, this is your support network, and you own it, you know what you need, and we are simply here to support you. We're not here to tell you how to do it right. So, is that enough?
Thanks, Molly. Yeah, it's cool. Pia, what about for you? Tell us a little bit about you and what Dying to Know Day means to you.
Well, so I wear about 10 different hats, but one of them was, the original one started as an undergraduate fashion designer, which is kind of very far away from death in most people's mind. But I started my PhD and was looking at fashion as metaphor for mortality and vulnerability, and then I had to face the reality of it, and that was when my grandfather, my nonno, died, and I actually went and dressed him for his funeral, and that was, you know, about 5 years ago, and looking back on it now, I'd have to say that it was one of the single most profound moments in my life that has ultimately changed the complete directory of where I thought I was going. And so I finished my PhD. I now make garments for the grave, which are indeed garments to be worn for the grave. I also dress the people for their funerals and encourage family to partake in what I think is a lost ritual in the funeral industry. I have recently started the Natural Death Advocacy Network, which is bringing together a whole group of practitioners, both in Victoria and ultimately Australia-wide, and we're really advocates for change, and so we're hoping that we can legislate things like natural burial, which is my baby after spending a year in the UK working at one. And sort of analysing areas where family can have involvement and being facilitators for families who perhaps don't have the knowledge and perhaps need someone with them during those times. And so Dying to Know Day for me is really an invitation to talk about one of the most significant things to happen to a human being. It can be really simple as, I use the garments for the grave has not necessarily become the core of my practice. It is one of the things I do, but it is actually it's a conversation starter. People are either disgusted by the idea or love the idea, and you know, oh well, what will I wear for burial, and what's my favourite garment, and things like that. And because clothing and fashion is something that we all engage in every day, it could be, well, would you wear that for your funeral? And that usually can be a bit of a shock, but it can also take you into some really meaningful conversations with your family.
Yeah,
so yeah.
So thinking about events, I mean, one of the things that we encourage people to do, or the whole idea of the day really, is to use the day as a time to take action, and that can mean taking action from the point of view of getting involved as an organisation. And Molly, you might want to talk about what you guys did last year down at Austin, but also the idea of personal action, which we found last year became a really important and significant part of the day, where people were like, right, I am using Dying to Know Day to connect with people that I need to have a conversation with. So I thought I'd ask you both, tell us about events. Well, tell us a little about, Molly, about how you put together your event from last year and any advice or any learnings that you had from that. And I wonder if for you, Pia, you could also maybe talk about what you've got planned down in, what you've got on the boil down in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Well, I guess from my perspective, last year was pushing the envelope a little bit, because, you know, I work at the Olivia Newton-John Cancer and Wellness Centre at Austin Health, and this time last year I was in a different role. I was manager of both palliative care, but I was also manager of arts and healthcare, and we jumped onto Dying to Know Day because I'm very fortunate to have a manager of cancer services volunteers who really gets this, and I was very fortunate at the time to have an executive team who were very supportive of the fact that the Cancer Centre not only has a focus on best practice contemporary cancer treatment and care, but we also have a beautiful 28-bed palliative care unit. And there's a bit of friction, I've got to say, and this is just my personal view, it's not the organisational view, but I see a bit of friction in oncology and cancer care generally when people get to a point where they are no longer, where curative treatment is no longer going to be an advantage to them or likely to be successful. So there's this sort of tension between active treatment of cancer and the whole view towards cure and the movement from that point to someone coming to terms with the fact that their cancer isn't going to be cured and that they will be looking at death sooner than they thought they would otherwise be. So when you work in an environment that's so focused on treatment and cure and survivorship, etc., and you bring in the idea around having a public event that focuses on mortality, of course, you know, amongst the health professionals, there's a bit of anxiety around that, and certainly, if I'm really honest, I've got to say that's what we sort of bumped up against a little bit at the outset, because we had decided we wanted to have an event that replicated the Jim Henson Storyteller program that used to be on the telly when my kids were little. And we wanted to build a lounge room set and invite people to sit in the lounge chair in front of a built fireplace and tell stories that they were prepared for other people to hear. And initially my idea was that the question we would ask people was, if there was one story you want people to remember about you after you've died, what would that story be? So we were wanting to explore legacy, but some of my colleagues found that a bit confronting, the fact that we were saying, you know, what story after you've died do you want people to remember? So we, in the spirit of collaboration and mediation, we reconfigured the question. We asked people if there was one story you wanted people to remember about your life, what would that story be? Now, the thing that really struck me was I thought we'd have probably half a dozen people sit in the chair and tell a story. As it turned out, we had over 40 people sit in the chair and tell a story, ranging in age from 15 to 70, and probably 80% of those people told legacy stories or stories about someone that they loved who died, even though we'd reconfigured the question so it wasn't focused on dying. That is what people wanted to talk about. And so that was a very profound lesson for me to go with my gut and trust it and know that normal people out there don't need us to protect them. Normal people out there just need an opportunity and a safe place, and then they will do what's right for them. And for me, that's what Dying to Know Day is all about.
And so, Molly, when you're thinking about people who might be thinking about running an event from a hospital setting or from a kind of a traditional health setting, any kind of top tips for those people?
Talk to lots of people. Get your colleagues on board. For me, one of the really powerful things was getting buy-in from the medical oncologists and surgical oncologists and the executive team at the hospital. And I've got to say, our CEO sat in that armchair and told the story about the conversation he had with his dad as he was dying, which set a really lovely tone for all of the health professionals who were there. And we had oncologists sit in the chair and tell stories, you know, because, look, health professionals are just the same as everyone else. They are a health professional because that's their job. It shouldn't define them. It doesn't define the person that they are. It's just the job they do. And sometimes we fall into the trap as health professionals of thinking we have to be somehow more insightful, more knowledgeable, more controlled than everyone else. But the bottom line is we're people just like everybody else. And if we can't, you know, open our shirt and pour our guts onto a plate and share it with other people, how do we expect other people to do that?
Cool. Thanks, Molly. So talk to the executive, get people on board. If I noticed that this year there's some health professionals kind of taking personal action or doing things in their personal life that they can manage as well, which I thought was really interesting. What about you, Pia?
Oh, we've got a few things that are kind of boiling away at the moment, and we're hoping, I'll let it out, but I'm hoping that we're going to have a booth in the city where we will literally be there saying, what are you dying to know? So yeah, just trying to arrange printing and things like that, and, you know, talking to the council to make sure it's okay, because that's the main thing. You don't want to be set up and booted out. So, I've got a couple of the group from the NDAN committee who are just wonderful and incredibly knowledgeable. Sally Can and Kathy McCormick and Libby Maloney, I can't even speak properly at the moment, and a bunch of our other members are hoping to get together and just, you know, provoke the question. Hopefully not have too many people come up and ask random, I'm dying to know who, you know, killed JFK and things like that. But
Oh,
We'll see. And I'm also looking at doing a Before I Die wall. Um,
okay.
so have started thinking about,
So
well,
for
the
for anyone out there who doesn't know what the Before I Die wall is, can you just quickly talk
No.
about that?
yeah, sure. I'm just going to get a book,
Okay.
which is on the floor next to me. So Before I Die, is that coming up
Yes, it
clearly?
is now.
It's basically a blackboard where you've got Before I Die ... and people given a piece of chalk and asked to write what they'd like to do before they die. And some of them is fall in love, or love myself, or make a chance or make a change through my artwork. So, they're quite broad. Some people are eat strawberry shortcake, I think was one of the ones I saw.
Okay.
But it's sort of reminding people of something they want to do that they haven't done yet in their life. And I think it's really sweet and really simple. So hopefully you'll see us around the city, um, waving our flag maybe. And that's one thing. I know quite a few people have organised other events in Melbourne, or they are in the process of getting permission to do things.
Okay.
And yeah, there's heaps of stuff you can do from on a real small scale as well, that I think is, have a conversation with your parents. Um, Go and visit your grandparents and ask them about their life, and see where some of those conversations can take you.
And any advice for people who are doing that?
Well, starting those conversations, sometimes you can't. Well, sometimes you can go in and say, okay, tonight we're talking about death. We don't have to talk about it all the time. It's going to be a hard conversation. But then they'll find that they're probably, get the giggles and reminisce, and it doesn't become a hard conversation. But so you can approach it that way and say, look, we're setting aside time tonight over dinner to talk about death and what happens if one of us dies, because sometimes it's things like, Mum, Dad, where is the will kept? And what do I do? Who are the friends I need to call? And some of that is very, very hard, and I admit I kind of, every time Mum talks about one of her friends, I kind of have a little notepad on my phone and I jot their name down. It's who are the people that really matter to those closest to you, and what are the things that they want. And of course my mum goes, oh, do whatever you want. I won't be there. I don't really care. And I'm like, all right, we'll have a big Catholic do, and we'll have a priest. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I just want it simple. And you go, yes. So you want something simple. And so it's every conversation is different. I know I've got people who are desperate to have the conversation with their family, and they're finding it hard to bring it up. And so sometimes in those situations, I would literally say, tonight when you come over, we're going to talk about this. And the initial kind of awkwardness of it will dissipate quite quickly in the experiences I've had. And it's not something that's going to bring about death. And so it's that whole, that talking, what is it? Talking about sex won't make you pregnant, and talking about death won't kill you. And I think we need to take some of that superstition out of the equation, because saying that I will one day die, I don't know when it will be. I hope it's not anytime soon. But by saying the words and really being accepting of the fact that this is a one and only life that I have, and what are the things I want to get done in it, and what do I want to leave behind, really get to the nitty-gritty about what you really value in life.
Yeah,
So
great.
it's, yeah.
What about for you, Molly? Any tips on on having those conversations? Do you have like a top tip? If you want to have, if you're looking to have a difficult conversation with someone in your life, and you're going to use Dying to Know Day as maybe the day to do that, is there a way that you would recommend, or is there something that you recommend?
I suppose for me, I try and take those opportunities wherever they come. And, you know, as ambassador for Dying to Know Day, and I'm sure Pia would agree with me, this day is really about focusing the opportunity for people. But it doesn't mean that we only have these conversations on August the 8th every year. It needs to be, August the 8th, Dying to Know Day needs to be the day that we say to people, you have permission to have these conversations whenever and wherever it's appropriate, so that conversations happen. Like, my favourite example I use is when you're walking along the street with a little person and you come across a dead cat, you don't shovel them to the other side of the footpath and rush them past. You stop and you pick up a stick and you say to the little person, give that cat a poke and tell me what happens. And they say, it doesn't move, or its hair's falling off, or it's got an eye hanging out. So there's your opportunity to talk about what death is. And tell me what the difference is between this cat and your cat at home. And did you know that one day every cat dies like this? And then, you know, their body decomposes, blah, blah. But that gives the child then the permission to ask the questions that are important to them. So what is dead? Okay, dead's really easy. Dead is when your heart stops beating, your lungs stop breathing, and your body just stops. It no longer works. It just becomes a shell. And that's what dead is. And little kids understand that because they see it around them all the time. We don't think they do, but they do. And the problem that has happened, in my view, is that this, you know, the last 20 or 30 years, we've tried so hard to protect our kids from anything that could upset them or make them worry or make them concerned, that we've removed them, we've wrapped them in bubble wrap, and we've removed them from the experience of living. And a living
I don't
experience.
think it's just children, to be honest.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But the problem is it starts when we're children, and we grow up with this, you know, it's the white ribbon syndrome, I reckon. It's like we tell all our kids, even if they come last in a race, how wonderful they are. Well, if they came last in the race because they didn't try, we should be saying, hey, mate, you could have done a bit better there. You know, not giving them a white ribbon and saying, oh, you did a great job. You know, we've become far too clinical and too plastic about everything. And all we've done is disempower children from asking questions that are important to them, and disempower, by flow-on effect, adults. And because death is so removed from most people's day-to-day experiences, you know, I've had lots of people say to me that they didn't even experience a significant death in their family until they were well in their late 20s. Now, when my father was a child, they experienced death all the time. So our communities have changed a lot, and I think it's up to us to start reinvesting in providing information that informs and that enables people to do what it is they need to do at any given time. And that means children should be involved in the process from the get-go. We should be talking about death like we talk about, you know, having babies. I've got a 3-year-old grandchild who knows what death is because her sunflowers die at the end of Christmas.
Yeah.
But she collects the seeds and she saves them in a bag until next spring, and then she plants them because she knows they'll bloom when Father Christmas comes. Now, I know that she doesn't understand the permanency of death because she's only 3, but she knows what dead is, and she will show you a dead leaf and squish it up in her hand and say, that's what dead feels like, because live is squishy, dead is crunchy. And that's exactly what she said to me. So they're not.
That's great. Because I think
you know?
Molly, we get a bit caught up in the idea that do kids understand death? Do they really understand it? And only if they really understand it do we include them in rituals. But it's such a, I mean, it's the one of the reasons that kids get left out of rituals and out of those conversations so much, because we just like to say that it's almost like a habit, or kids don't understand, or they're too young to understand. But I think I always like to say that children understand separation from the earliest experience. They understand separation. Even small babies understand what it's like to be separated from people who care from them and love them. And if you can understand separation and being away from your primary caregivers, you understand loss, and that's really
And look, at the risk of sounding like one of those people that I am, that I always criticise, like all of the research says that by the time kids are 12, they get the permanency aspect, but prior to that, they don't. However, that doesn't mean they don't understand the concept. They do understand what dead is. They just don't understand it's forever until they're 12. So if you take that into consideration, if you take that into consideration, as well as the fact that children are very cognizant of suffering. They know when adults around them are suffering. And the kids that I worked with in the past who would come because their parents were concerned about them, predominantly their issues were all because they thought their parents didn't care when grandma died, or granddad, or their sibling, or whoever it was, because they never saw mum or dad cry. Mum and dad just got angry after that happened. And mum and dad never explained, look, sorry, I'm really angry today because, so-and-so should be here. That's all it takes. You don't have to sit down and give your kids the A to Z of Webster's, encyclopedia. All you have to do is ask their questions when they ask them honestly and with undivided attention. So stop what you're doing, sit down and answer their question, and be confident that when they say, okay, thanks, and they run out the back door to play in a sandpit, that they've got what they needed right there.
Yeah.
And that they may come back and ask something else, but they may not, and that's okay.
No, you've got to leave that door open for them. And the other thing with, touching on children at funerals, I think that adults really miss out if they don't bring the kids to funerals.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Some of the best funerals I've been to, I was at over 100 of them last year at Clarendon Wood, were when the kids got involved. I mean, there were, when women were there. I had one funeral where the gentleman who's died, his granddaughter was there breastfeeding her child. And it was just beautiful that as you lay one person to rest, there's more coming through. And that to me is a form of immortality. And I mean, we had kids throwing flowers into graves. We had kids reading poems. And they get it. And there was a situation where a young mother was terminally ill, and she, after she died, her husband didn't want to go in and see her body, but the kids did. And they ran in and they understood immediately, she's not in there anymore. but they laid down with her and they kissed her cheek, and they taught their father how to deal with their mum's body. And they're incredibly intuitive. If someone wants to touch Grandpa's face in the coffin, let them. They'll gather pretty quickly that he's cool and he's not in there anymore, and then it's okay to let go. It's when you say, Grandma's gone to sleep, and they see the coffin go into the ground or the coffin go somewhere, they think she's going to damn well wake up. And that's traumatic. That's where you cause trauma by just trying to sort of protect people in euphemism, that you stuff up the grieving process. If you sort of say that she's dead, and for me, being dead is quite mysterious, because clearly something has changed. The heart has stopped beating, so sort of everything starts to surrender to gravity, and they're just not alive anymore. And it doesn't mean that their body is disgusting and horrible and something to be scared of at all. It's just going through this very natural process of surrendering back to where we all came from. And I have a soft spot for natural burial, and of course when you when you plant someone, which is, you plant someone into the earth, over the next few months you see plants start to come up from that grave, and wildflowers and poppies, and that's them, that's their energy feeding into new life. And it's not just poetics, it's bloody hard science. So and I think
you've
there's
got the
something,
hard science to prove it, Pia.
I do. Yes, I won't go into that unless you want me to, but I've done quite a lot of experimentation on biodegradability of fibers, and when I make burial garments, I want them to look after the psychology of the living, but also then allow the body to go back into the earth. And so I sort of think of it as your body is a gift that you return after you've died. Our bodies are, we feed our bodies, and we give nutrient to our bodies through the lives of other things, whether they're plants or animals. And so when we're done with our body, why not give it back? And so I tend to think of the garment as like the wrapping paper. You're giving the gift of the body back to the earth, and the earth slowly unwraps it and embraces the body. And I've a real turning point within my sorry.
I was going to say, I don't think there's many people who have ever heard death described like that, Pia.
That's how it works.
Yeah, I know, but I just don't think that's a language that we hear when we hear about death, and we hear about burial. We hear about kind of the things that you do to the dead body, but we don't hear about what happens, and we don't hear about the earth, and all of those things and processes that you just described. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it makes, sometimes we take the nature out of death and what that means. I mean, the earth is a sealed container, essentially, and all the atoms that exist already exist. And all we do is shake it up every now and then, and things change from one thing to another, whether it's a plant to a bird to another bird that eats the other bird, or to a chicken that a human eats, and then the human goes back as well. I don't know. We have this intense need to symbolically preserve ourselves, and I think that's systematic or kind of symptomatic rather of the way that we deal with death. And I think that if we reanalyze why we do some of the things we do for funerals, it reconfigures the way we think about death and continuing to live after a death. Because, you know, when my grandfather died, I was in my 20s, and he was the first person I had really experienced death with, and he was old. He was in pain. He was over it, and he was ready. And, you know, why would we try to hold on to him for longer? And so to let him go, people often feel guilt if they say, you know, there's relief. But I think there's a lot of relief that comes with the, you know, a timely death, or when someone's been in a lot of pain and they're out of that pain. But I think legacy was really important to touch on, and privilege of having known someone, because we all will die.
Yeah, can I ask both of you a question about legacy? Because one of the things that is in the Dying to Know book, and it's a hidden thing, I'm going to grab the book again, just because in the back of the book, not many people know, or like know immediately, that in the back of the book, there's this gorgeous little piece called The Emotional Will.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And I just, I mean, in terms of like personal actions that people can take on Dying to Know Day, and connect, I guess, with some of the things that you've already talked about, Molly and Pia, could we talk a little bit about maybe the kinds of legacy, the personal actions that people could take around legacy, and maybe could you reflect a little bit on wills and emotional wills and legacy items, memory boxes, and so on. Molly, would you like? Oh, Pia, yep, Pia. Sorry, someone go.
No, Molly, you go.
Well, I'll take it sort of down the. I'll take it down two paths.
Okay.
I think we think preparation and formalising any preparation about what we want to leave behind often has to take the form of a will or a, you know, medical power of attorney or an advanced care plan, etc. All of which are fantastic things, and, you know, just to put in a plug for Respecting Patient Choices here, which grew up, which was born at the Austin.
Quickly tell us what that is. Just, I'm going to remind both of you that we've got 15 minutes left, and I'm listening to keep us to time. So we're quickly you're going to quickly tell me about Respecting Patient Choices, and then tell me about legacy, and then Pia, it's your turn.
So Respecting Patient Choices is an advanced care planning program that is national and statewide. So all it's really saying is have the conversation with the people you love and you care about stuff that matters, and write it down. Now, you don't have to write it down on the templates. You can write it on a piece of toilet paper if you want to, but you need to have the conversation with people. But from my perspective, I wrote my first advanced care plan 6 months after getting married, which was an eon ago, I've got to tell you. And every year I get that letter out and I read it and I laugh and I rewrite it and I put it back in my top drawer. And initially my husband knew it was there and he's got one. And then as my kids grew up, they all know it's there. So that's my advanced care plan. That talks about the stuff that matters to me. And it's not about necessarily where I want to be buried or what songs I want at my funeral. It's about every year reassessing what my life in this last year has meant to me, what I have been given by other people, and what I hope I have given to them. And to me, that is legacy.
Oh, I was going to say, do you keep the old letters as well? Because, you know, that would be a beautiful thing for, you know, for those left behind to read, you know, to see what was important.
Hey, you know me and how I write. All the old letters are there. Every love letter I ever got from my husband before I got married, all of that's there. My
Beautiful.
kids are going to be throwing up in a bucket when they read all the stuff that's But the
that's lovely.
essence of that is people, and I guess this comes from having worked as I've worked all these years and sat by bedsides with people as they died and listened to their stories. Most people think their life is unremarkable, and it's not until someone sits and listens to the stories that have been meaningful to them that they actually understand their life has been remarkable and it's had an impact on a whole stack of people, and it still is, because every time that story is told, the listener is given a gift. The listener is presented with something that the storyteller thinks is inconsequential, but to the person who receives it, it is really valuable, and it contributes to their life into the future. And just to wrap that up, I use stories patients have told me over the last 30 years all the time. One day I sat down and tried to write down all of the people I could remember that I'd been with when they died, not people I'd looked after during, their illness. And I stopped counting at 420. Now, I couldn't remember all their names, but I remembered things about them. I remembered stories. I remembered a wink. I remembered a crease on a face. I remembered, a tattoo. All of those things that clearly identified individuals. And those stories have informed what I do. Like, I wouldn't be living the life I live now if people hadn't shared their stories with me. And I only hope that I can leave that behind for other people who are coming up, that I will have told someone at some stage something that has been meaningful to them, and then that makes my life worthwhile. That's legacy. It's never a statue in, it's not Trafalgar Square, it's not Nelson's Column, it's the little things that have an impact on other people.
Right. So Molly, for you, the take home is your stories are your legacy, and find a way, maybe a personal way, to capture those, whether it be storytelling through a piece of paper that you officially need to write down because it's important for your advanced care directive or an emotional will, or even just your financial will, but to tell a story around that.
Yeah, and to value what it is that you've lived. Like I say, people think that they have to, win an Academy Award or win the Booker Prize or whatever it is. You don't. Every life experience is equally valuable, and if by sharing that with someone else, you support them, or you ease their pain, or you ease their fear or their concerns, or you give them a little grain of yourself that becomes part of them, surely that's what we should be doing. Surely we should be valuing those things.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Molly. That's amazing. The other thing I think, the take home there for me as well is, as a health professional, writing down some of those stories, that could be such an incredibly powerful action for someone who is working in palliative care or end of life or aged care, wherever, the funeral industry, to stop and capture some of those moments. It's a beautiful task, a beautiful action. Thanks for sharing that, Molly. What about for you, Pia? What about legacy for you?
I can't agree with the storytelling enough. I mean, if someone is recalling a memory, you make a memory of their memory in action, and you know, listening to the story of how my grandparents met. And, you know, my nonna was incredibly young with 4 kids and had to jump on a ship over to Australia, and took months. And you know, there's so many stories that I'm now kind of a repository for, that it's amazing. But I wanted to share with you the legacy from 2 of my grandparents that I absolutely adore. Both are recipes. Both are dishes that remind me of my grandparents. For my nonna, it's her pastina, and I try to keep pure to her recipe. And when I cook it and smell it, it does take me back to a different time and place. And I share that meal with my friends and family, and so it becomes part of my repertoire and my legacy. I also have my grandma's original yo-yo recipe framed on my wall somewhere. Oh, those biscuits. And cooking. I mean, I can't tell you how much I miss my nonna's cooking. It was what brought the family together. And so, I mean, if there's a dish that you have by a friend or a family member, on Dying to Know Day, get them to write it down in their handwriting, preferably with a smudge of food on the side or something that reminds you of that moment. Because for me, I mean, it's one of the undervalued legacies is the cooking and the sustenance and the food and the smell. I mean, there are so many emotions and so many sensory things that we can't get on paper in words. You know, in saying that, the emotional will that you mentioned at the back of the Dying to Know book, is if ever there's something that's going to make me get really teared up, it's thinking about an emotional will. Who do you leave that memory to? Who do you leave that song to? And you contact these people throughout your life, and you say, okay, I've been thinking about my emotional will, and I want you to always remember that day that we did this thing. And there's small verbal, mementos that we carry around because we don't get to take anything with us. So it's the memories and the stories that are the most important part of legacy. But it's, I have, and almost analysing some of the relationships we have with people to work out, well, that moment gave me strength. And, the biggest legacy my grandparents have left me with is their death. I mean, through their death, I've changed as a human being. And so death in itself can be legacy. You find that you've got strength and compassion that you never realised you had. Enduring through someone's pain, being with them when they're in pain, wiping their face, doing some of those benign tasks, teaches you a lot about that relationship and that intimacy, and that becomes legacy. So I think that we need to sort of think about not always the positive, but some of the moments that weren't great. I mean, that's part of what that person leaves you with, and that becomes part of yourself. And so you're made up of an amalgamation of the people you've met and the experiences you've had.
Oh, thanks, Pia. Sorry, Molly.
Can I just jump in for 1 second and say I really like Pia's idea about, those little taking those opportunities to say to people, when you did that, when you said that, I felt like this, and I really valued it. Because, to be honest, when people say that to me, I think, oh, really? I don't even remember that day. So for me, it may have been a throwaway thing. I might have hugged someone or got them a glass of wine when they needed one, or, whatever it is. And they've hung on to that as being a really important thing. And for me, it's just been so maybe that's what we need to be doing on Dying to Know Day too, is saying to the people that we care about, hey, remember that day you did this? I really value that because I really remember it. And whenever I feel like this, I have that memory.
And that's one of my favourite parts of life. That's one of my fondest memories. I mean, it's talking about death is not just talking about the day you die and what happens to your body and your funeral. It is talking about life, and it is talking about what's important to you in life and what makes your life worth living.
Yeah, great.
The stuff that matters.
And I think the other piece that this speaks to for me is the idea of really deep listening. And so we talk a lot about talking about death, but the other aspect of talking about death is being able to actually stop and listen to someone when they say, hey, actually, I want to talk about the end of my life, or I want to talk about the fact the cancer's not going away, or I want to talk with you now about moving into an aged care facility, or whatever that is. Being able to really stop in those moments and listen and go, tell me more, when you might not want to hear. But that person has taken the risk to kind of say, hey, I want to talk, I need to talk about this with you, to be able to stop and listen deeply to that is so important.
And the other thing with that, I mean, when my grandmother started talking about what she wanted for her funeral, I pulled out my camera. I pulled out my mobile phone and started recording some of that conversation so that when she did die, I shared it within my family to sort of say, well, this is what she said. And so I think that if someone isn't ready to listen to that conversation, maybe record it and give it to them for a time when they can listen to it. Yeah, just
great. That's a great example. Okay, Molly, one more thing, and then we might need to sum up.
The person has told you what they want to tell you because they trust you, and then because they trust you, they will have worked up, or, you know, it will have taken them a great amount of courage to talk about this with you. So what you're actually doing by sitting and being in the moment and sitting in that discomfort for you is giving them your half of the bargain. So they're sacrificing to share this with you, and you're sacrificing to sit in that discomfort and receive it, but it makes a partnership, and that's what gives you a sense of balance. So it's an equal thing.
Cool. Absolutely. That's a great space to start to really wind up quickly, because I think, you know, Dying to Know Day is partly about trying to set up a kind of collective action across the country. So there might be these small, what feels like small actions, but they really are part of one bigger action across the country, which is what's exciting to me. So I'm wondering, I just want to plug, a little quick plug for the fact that we've got like resources and other little bits and bobs
bumper
on
stickers.
The website. Stickers, bumper stickers. Bumper stickers, that's right. Bumper stickers, which you know, you can plaster your car with. I think I said today on Twitter, declare your death awareness with a bumper sticker. Yeah. So we've got bumper stickers, but we've got the Dying to Know book, we've got some packs, we've got some death literacy cards that we've been playing around this year and really the idea of the death literacy cards is they provide kind of prompts and questions in a group discussion and an individual discussion, and on the front is a whole heap of prompts and questions, and on the back are some responses to those questions. And it really, you know, we found that the people are really using them to kind of get their research happening, personal research, and also most people, these are based on the research the surveys that we did last year. So they really are trying to respond to what people are really most interested in: do-it-yourself funerals and where you die and how you leave a legacy and so on. And they come in a big set and a little set, so they're really kind
They're
of
beautiful.
useful. They
Mm.
are beautiful. And
I'm going to carry a set around in my wallet.
yeah, we had them at the pub the other night. Well, can I say that?
Mm.
It was really cool because we were they're a little puzzle as well. So while we were kind of trying to figure out the puzzle, we were talking about death, and it was really fun. But
Fantastic.
so all of that, and there's heaps of tips. I want to really thank Gypsy, who hasn't made it tonight. Hi, Gypsy, if you're watching. Gypsy's been doing
She's been
heaps
sending
of
around heaps of stuff.
She's been doing heaps of connecting with people in Victoria, and she has developed the most beautiful kind of tip sheet and information on the website, which is mostly all of her gorgeous work, because she's done heaps of events on the Central Coast in New South Wales and really has a very in-depth death literacy is really death literacy in action, and I love working with her, and I'm sorry that you're not here, Gypsy, but thank you. So please go check out those things on the website. Top tips before you go, Molly and Pia, what do you want to encourage people to do, and can people speak to you about Dying to Know Day? Will you do radio interviews? And
absolutely, I'm dying to talk about Dying to Know. Top tips: use the day as an excuse to talk about it. Use the day and say, "Hey, did you know it's Dying to Know Day?" And people might say, "Well, what's that?" And you can have a conversation about death. Like, the day itself is an introduction to talking about what you're dying to know. I mean, Billy Connolly's show's about to start tonight.
That's the other reason we need to.
It's on soon. And so say you watched that, and what does that, are there things within that you liked or disliked? So there are so many ways into the conversation, and it's just about starting it and evolving it and learning about what people want for the end of their life and their death. That only happens once.
Great. Thanks heaps, Pia. Molly?
So I guess my take-home message is always, we never underestimate people's capacity to have an opinion, a feeling, a thought. The problem is we a lot of the time shut that down and we don't allow them to share it with other people. So I like to see Dying to Know Day as an invitation to all the people out there who feel a bit reluctant about having a conversation, to just take a big deep breath and jump in, and you might be quite surprised about the responses you get from people you think you know very, very well. And certainly I'm happy to talk to anyone, as usual. Chase me up on the website. Happy to, any place, anytime.
Yeah.
And all of Pia's and Molly's details are on the website as well. But if you Google the Death Talker or Pia Interlandi, you will find them top of Google. So thank you so much for joining us. I see that we've had some people watching. That is incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And you'll be very proud of me because I actually got to put a profile photo up throughout that process. It took me an hour, but I'm still a blue head on the screen. So hopefully someone can see my head when they look on the profile page.
Yeah. Google Molly and you'll see that she is a real person, not just a blue avatar. Yeah. Although I see your colours are quite consistent with the colours we use for Dying to Know Day, but Molly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was nice of you. Thoughtful. Okay, well, I think we'll wind up. I see that we've got a few comments there too. So Molly and Pia, you might want to go on to the YouTube channel and respond to some of those comments as well. But yeah, enjoy Billy Connolly, which is coming up in 20 minutes as well for all those people who are watching
20
live.
20 minutes, that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pia. Thank you so much, Molly, and hello, Gypsy.
No worries, Kerry.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. See you later. Bye.
Bye.